Psst. Hey, Guru, guess what I am?
Not now, Slasher.
Oh, come on! Just one guess?
No, I am trying to figure out my next episode, and there's just so many options.
Please! I'll give you a puppy.
Okay, fine. What is it? What was so important that you had to interrupt my very important decision-making process?
I'm a basket case! Get it?
Basket case! The tenant in room 7 is very small, very twisted, and very mad. And from the looks of it, very horny too. It puts the lotion in the basket, or it gets the chode again. Joking aside, Basket Case is actually a very special movie, as it is not only director Frank Henenlotter's very first film, it is also the start of a trilogy, with each film more deranged than the last. Now, my personal experience with these movies is quite simple. I rented them at a young age, and I watched them all, one by one. First, second, third. But what's really interesting is, apparently, that's how most people saw these movies. You see, despite having a limited theatrical release in 1982, albeit in a censored format, and many stints as a midnight movie, with Joe Bob Briggs' approval no less, it wouldn't be until the rise of home video that Basket Case found its proper audience. Without VHS tapes, Basket Case might have been a cinematic oddity lost in time. Instead, it became a cult hit with 2 sequels, and kickstarted the career of one of the most unique writer-directors the genre has to offer. Not bad for a film shot on 16mm for a measly $33,000 to $35,000, practically chump change by theatrical movie standards. So let's check into the non-existent Broslin Hotel and prepare to get ripped in half. For this week's schlocky Siamese Scarefest is none other than Basket Case. Down, boy. Well, there's nothing too special about this title card, aside from the uppercase E's bad case of Ebola, of course. Following that, we cut to Dr. Lifflander, who is currently running from, instead of with, the shadows of the night. Oh man, poor dude's being stalked by the foliage. I know how that feels.
Oh no, not there!
Johnny!
Daddy?
Psst! Hey! Hey, badass! Down here! I've seen you be.
Christ, 3 years almost.
Let's see here. Killer already inside, check. Phone line's cut so we can't make a call, check. Power goes out and yet somehow everything is perfectly lit, double, triple, and quadruple check. But let's not forget the good doctor's glorious potato aim. Either they drop the servers back to 20 Hz or this guy just sucks. There ain't enough Blistex in the world to clean that shit up, yeesh. Funny enough, the owners of this house were originally excited to film a movie in their home, but were way less enthused when they finally saw it.
Gee, I wonder what set them off. Oh, you mean they let a horror movie film in their house and were shocked to discover the movie had killing in it? Whoa. That's some Nobel Peace Prize winning intelligence right there.
Following Lifflander's death, we cut to the Big Apple itself, New York City. A city of sin, drugs, and, of course, terrible audio dubbing.
I got acid blotters, rainbows, window pane, speed downs. What do you want, some girls? I got some nice girls. What the fuck is wrong with you anyway, man?
Sorry, man, it's nothing personal. It's just that guy's REO Speedwagon hairdo are the best noise-canceling headphones the 80s had to offer. This bewildered motherfucker here is Dwayne Bradley, who recently came to New York with his twin brother Belial in order to seek revenge on those who wronged them. Enter the Hotel Broslin, where it's always no homo unless you're on the down low. Actually, it's pronounced Broslin, but there's no joke in that pronunciation now, is there?
Welcome to the Mario Brothers Hotel, where Bowser checks in, but he don't check out. Also, don't drink water because the pipes are definitely filled with fungus.
Fun fact, that money is actually the film's entire budget, all $33,000 to $35,000 of it. Or at least what was left at the time of filming this scene anyway. And if you pay close attention, you might notice that this check-in desk is actually a decked-out freight elevator. They even lampshade the button with this here sign. Talk about moving up in the world. Anyway, later in room 7, we discover that Belial is on one of those zero-carb diets. Gots to get that Gwyneth Paltrow figure, yo! After all, it's how she fit in that other box once upon a Fincher. And yes, the resident of the basket is indeed Belial for convoluted reasons that I will explain as this video goes on.
No, I don't want to talk now. Go back to sleep.
Fine then, I'll go riff a different 1982 horror movie. You would never judge me, Q, would you? No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't, Q. You're just too damn cute, Q. Man, my existence is lonely. After some extremely one-sided pillow talk, we cut to this peeping Tom Arnold outside of room 7. He attempts to break in, but is stopped by another Broslin resident named Casey. And Casey is, of course, played by Beverly Bonner, a reoccurring staple of the Henenverse. HV for short.
Last week you were in the dumbwaiter.
And this week I'm in the smart waiter. Nyuk, nyuk, nyuk.
Nice meeting you, Dwayne Bradley. What the hell are you doing in this dump?
The following morning, Dwayne visits Dr. Needleman, MD. Not to be confused with Dr. Kutzman, OBGYN, of course. But is distracted by Sharon, the doctor's receptionist, and her strangely broken typewriter.
Yesterday it was squeaking, like if a mouse was caught inside. Like...
Congratulations, Dwayne. It's not every day you get hit on by a dog's chew toy. This exchange turns out to be a misunderstanding, however, as Sharon simply mistook Dwayne for the typewriter repairman.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I just assumed. I figured that was your toolbox or something.
That's not a toolbox. This is a toolbox. One day we'll get that new album. One day. Dwayne successfully cons his way into Dr. Needleman's office, who looks as if he stepped right out of an alternate universe where Kid Rock played Dr. House.
I'ma prescribe you your daily dose of power to dang to dang diggy diggy.
Holy shit, Dwayne's got a bad case of the Freddy Krueger. Better put some cream on that before the souls of dead children escape. No time for that though, as we got ourselves a kung fu interlude. Well, more a karate interlude, as this footage comes from The Bodyguard. The Sony Chiba flick, of course, not to be confused with the Kevin Costner one. I say as I push my glasses up ever so nerdily. Unfortunately, Dwayne's theatrical experience is cut short when some poor fool tries to steal his basket, only for the thief to discover the true horror inside. Later that night, Dwayne pays another visit to Dr. Needleman, and we finally get our first look at Belial in the flesh. Emphasis on in the flesh, by the way. And here he is, Belial in all his gorgeous glory. Or gorgeous gory, as it were. He's kinda like if Nerf tried to make a Geodude toy, but it melted in the molding process. A Geodud, if you will. In actuality, Belial was a puppet designed by Kevin Haney, and was actually puppeteered by Henenlotter himself. When making the puppet, however, they didn't have enough clay to fill in its insides, so they just filled it with whatever they could. Like if you look, the bone on the top of his head is clearly just a soda can. And as far as the face goes, I know it looks like the second coming of that Shatner Halloween mask, but it's actually a mold of actor Kevin Henterick's face. Because like I said earlier, these brothers are supposed to be twins. More on that later though, as it's time to watch this dumbass flail around without even trying to let go.
I got your dick!
Joking aside, Dr. Needleman's death is one of the most effective in the movie, mainly because the balance of comedy and horror is pitch perfect. But the thing about that is, that was mostly an accident. Henenlotter self-admitted that he had no idea what he was doing when he made this movie, which makes sense. This was his first film. He didn't even raise enough to make it properly, so he had to make a lot of changes while they were filming. On top of that, they mainly shot on weekends over the course of a year, so maintaining continuity was a bitch and a half. But despite that, there's something about this movie that remains entertaining to this very day. And this is because Henenlotter actively experimented with its tone. He wasn't sure how any given scene should feel, so he threw caution to the wind and went for pure chaos. He figured even if a scene wasn't scary, it might at the very least be funny. And if it wasn't funny, hopefully it would at least still be entertaining for its shock value. And this extremely risky gamble, which could have led to a complete and utter mess of a movie, paid off. Now granted, Henenlotter would succeed way more at this tonal chaos in his later films, but it cannot be denied that he successfully laid the groundwork here. Following Dr. Needleman's tragic happening, which by the way was just mangled pizza covered in red corn syrup, yum yum, Dwayne abandons his brother for an afternoon date with Sharon.
I really don't want to see the city. I just said that as an excuse to
Tell you about my Lord and Savior, Danny Sexbang. All hail the Hair Lord.
In all seriousness, this is actually a pretty cute date. Really humanizes Dwayne and highlights his naivete. Plus, the actors pull off their cheesy lines really well. Much better than their original encounter anyway.
Haven't had the time? Well, what about Radio City Music Hall? Or the UN? Had time for them?
It turns out, however, that Dwayne and Belial are not just twins, they're also telepathically linked. So when Dwayne gets horny, Belial gets... Man, puberty must have been really weird for these guys.
Oh yeah, boy. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna get some of that. Oh. Ah! Ow! Oh, man. I am my brother's creamer.
Following this 1970s porno kiss, we get a scene that really puts the stop in stop motion.
It's time to stop!
Sadly, Frank originally planned for there to be more animation, but because this scene came out so goofy, he scrapped all the other animated sequences. Which is really too bad if you ask me, though I admit that might be surprising. I mean, look at this. Laika, this guy was not, but I'm glad he at least kept this scene because it always gets a huge laugh when I show it to my friends. Man, the behind the scenes of how-to basic videos are pretty much what I expected, actually. Anyway, Belial's rampage attracts the other Broslin residents, including this sneaky piece of shit.
Oh, boo-boo, I think I opened up the wrong picnic basket.
So apparently, while Belial feels Dwayne's erections, Dwayne in turn feels Belial's murders. Seems like a fair trade, really. Kinda like that time I mind-melded with Charles Manson.
God damn
it! Oh, not another race war! Damn you, Manson! Damn you to hell!
Following the bumbling burglar's murder, or following that one time Frank Henenlotter grabbed him in the worst lumpy space princess cosplay I've ever seen, Detective Richard Pryor arrives on the scene looking mean.
You always leave money lying around like that?
Nah, man. I make it rain. Yeah, ad revenue was down, so I kind of had to budget this joke. So, there you go. So now that Dwayne and Belial are both deep in the shit, both literally and figuratively, Dwayne gets himself a stiff drink in what is totally just a bar, and not at all a famous gay sex club in the New York City meatpacking district. Although it totally was. Now, what happens next is one of the sloppier scenes in the movie, and not just because of the rim jobs happening off-screen. Basically, Dwayne pours his heart out in a drunken monologue which explains he and Belial's entire backstory. That they were Siamese twins, that they had a psychic link, and that their father had them forcefully separated. In fact, the doctors they have been murdering were the ones who conducted the separation. And that information is good. It's a solid backstory, it lets us get to know our characters' motivations. The problem is, though, immediately after telling us that backstory, they then show us the very same backstory, making the entire monologue pointless. Wait, so you're telling me that Dr. Needleman stuck him with a needle, Dr. Cutter cut them in half, and Dr. Lifflander literally lifted Belial away from Dwayne? That's it. I take back all my criticism. Daddy Henenlotter is a fucking genius.
Hello, Mr. Bradley. You have spent your entire life thinking of your sons as one, but now you shall know what it's like to be two of a whole. Let the games begin.
Honestly, that entire scene is just a giant metaphor for the fact that their father is a massive tool. Back in the present, we find out that neighbor Casey lives inside a panel of Alan Moore's Watchmen, I guess. Which is totally not just the same room redecorated. No, can't possibly be that. Huh, I guess you could say he's somewhat of a pillowcase now. After Belial takes his place in the #MeToo Hall of Shame, the hotel collectively freaks out and reveals just how flimsy their walls really are. Meanwhile, Dwayne confronts Discount Sigourney Weaver, otherwise known as Dr. Cutter. But if you think for a minute she's gonna go out without a fight, you're actually quite right. She goes with foreplay instead.
We have such sights to show you.
This is actually my favorite effect in the entire movie, and that's likely because it was done by John Caglione Jr., otherwise known as the makeup man behind Heath Ledger's Joker. So you could say he worked on 2 basket cases in the end. Anyway, after the murder of Dr. Cutter, who probably could have survived those scalpels, but who am I to nitpick, Dwayne tries to celebrate with some awkward as fuck sex.
Take me, Dwayne.
Oh my God, what's that?
You can hear that and many other beautiful songs on Belial's first triple platinum album, I Have No Dick and I Must Scream. Available at a Barnes & Noble near you. Another fun fact, actress Terri Susan Smith actually sprained her leg running down these stairs. In fact, in an earlier scene, you can totally see her limping in as a result of the sprain. Gotta give her mad props for powering through it though, because that couldn't have been easy. Anyway, later that night, we discover that poor Belial made the tragic mistake of rubbing soap in his eye. E.T. Fuck you. Man, this remake of Twilight is really weird, and also quite insensitive to madballs. The beautiful poetry you just heard is from Belial's Grammy-nominated second album, I Must Shit, But I Have No Hole. Truly the Tupac of his generation. Originally, Frank envisioned an extended sequence of Belial rampaging through the streets, but because of budgetary restraints, he opted for this surreal dream sequence of naked Dwayne running instead, which, truth be told, is the far sexier option, so, I approve. And speaking of sexy, somewhere Quentin Tarantino is popping a gratuitous boner, the only kind of boner he knows how to pop. Now, this next scene is the most controversial in the entire movie, but not because audiences complained or anything, but because a majority of the crew left the set while they were filming it. So it turns out Dwayne is actually dreaming of what Belial is doing, and what Belial is doing is graphically raping Sharon. What apparently pissed the crew off, though, was less the rape depiction, and more the fact that Henenlotter kept adding blood to Terri Susan Smith's crotch. Which, sure, was in bad taste, but if the actress was okay with it, then who cares? You're making a splatter flick, it's gonna get bloody is all I'm saying. Though to be fair to everyone involved, the crew didn't just storm off in a huff. They left because Henenlotter actually asked them to, because he was sick of all the arguing, so, there you go. That's the whole truth. Anyway, Dwayne arrives way too late to save the receptionist, and this leads to a brotherly brawl that takes them all the way back to room 7 and out a window. Truly, 'twas bullshit killed the beast. But if that ending's got you down, be sure to pick up Belial's final and posthumous release, I Just Nutted, and She's Still Suckin'! Music of the soul, man! And that, my friends, was Basket Case, a film I love not in spite of its flaws, but because of them. Its low budget forced Henenlotter to take a ton of tonal risks, and this resulted in a batshit crazy movie that jumps between funny, scary, and sometimes even touching. None of the actors are particularly good, but all of them possess a charming quality that makes them an absolute joy to watch. In particular, Kevin Hentenrick perfectly captures a naivete that endures him to the audience despite all the awful shit he does. Reminder, this dude is an actual murderer, but he's a murderer with a heart of gold. And while this movie was severely limited with what it could do, I'm still amazed they were able to pull off things like literally having a real actor hanging from a real harness in a real street. That's the kind of stuff cheap movies like this rarely attempt, so I applaud them for going full bore with it. On the downside, this movie's greatest weakness is its writing. Not the ideas presented, but the actual words themselves. The dialogue, for example, is god-awful, and while that sometimes leads to hilarious results, other times it's just mind-numbing padding. All in all though, I wouldn't have this movie any other way. It's not my favorite basket case film, but without it, we wouldn't have the rest. Hell, without it, we wouldn't have the rest of Henenlotter's filmography, period. And that is a reality I refuse to live in. Man, I can't believe I managed to make it this entire video without a single Green Day reference. I don't know whether to be proud of myself or ashamed. Anyway, my fellow gorehounds,
Yeah! You just got basket faced!
But why?